Hey everybody, how's it going? Will here with 952 Outdoors, and in today's video, I want to talk to you all about leather crafting. And more specifically, I want to talk to you about how to get into leather crafting. What do you need to get started? Uh, I personally believe that bushcrafting and leather crafting sometimes go hand in hand. And with a lot of your bushcraft tools, you've got leather items to complement those tools. Um, and the way that I see it is, why am I going to go out and spend tons of money on leather items when I could get the satisfaction of just making the item myself? And it could be anything from building a sheath for your cutting tools to a leather pouch, just a simple little cinch pouch for your fire starting kit. Um, but again, why are you going to go out and buy those items when you could just make it yourself and learn a new craft at the same time? So if this is something that you're interested in learning more about, then stick around and we'll get started. Okay, so this right here is everything that you would need to make any type of sheath or pouch or anything really for your leather crafting kit. Um, One of the first things I think most people are going to try to jump into is building a sheath right off the bat. You got a nice new knife, you need a way to protect that knife. And everything that you see here is all that's needed to build this right here. So to start off with, you need a good sturdy cutting mat to protect your tabletop and to protect your knives. Moving right along, getting into the knives, I prefer to use this hobby knife right here, but a lot of people might prefer to just use a box cutter, or you already have a box cutter. So we're trying to save money. Why go out and purchase this when you have a box cutter right here? One thing to remember though with the box cutters, the blade is extremely sharp and will cut through leather with no issues. But unless you are going to strop this blade to bring the edge back, this is really going to be good for one project. I would probably toss this blade after cutting out all my pieces for this sheath right here, just because you want that nice clean cut every single time. The next thing that we have here is a bone folder. I find this really handy for when I'm wet molding. I'm able to use it to push down and get into the leather. But do I need this? No, I don't. I can honestly just use my hand and push the leather down when I'm wet molding, and it's just fine. Save yourself a couple bucks. You don't have to get this right away. The next thing in line here is a decent mallet. You're gonna want some type of mallet to to do the pounding on your leather. So what I'm talking about there is, when it comes time to make your stitching holes, you don't want to use a regular hammer. You want either rawhide or plastic like this one is right here. It'll just prolong the life of your tools if you use the correct hammer. Can I use a regular carpenter's hammer on here? I sure could. Am I going to destroy this faster? Definitely. I've had this about 2 years and you can see the paint hasn't even started chipping off yet. This right here is a stitching chisel, and this is got replaceable heads. So when I'm doing my long stitches, I can use this one right here. And then when I'm doing short stitches, I can replace it with the two, and I even have a single one. And this whole kit came with, I think it's 6, 5, and 4 stitches per inch. I just prefer the 6 stitches per inch. I think it just looks a little bit cleaner. To mark your stitching line, you need some wing dividers, and there's nothing fancy about this right here. This is the cheapest set of wing dividers that I could find, and it works just fine. Basically, you're just going to measure out how far you want that stitching line to be, and for me, I stick around 1/8 of an inch for the first line, and you're going to mark your stitching line like that when the leather is wet, and then you're going to punch it with your chisels afterwards. Before you stitch, so we'll wait to talk about that for a second. Before you stitch, you're going to want a want to dye your leather, and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I leave the dye natural or the leather natural. It just depends on the mood that I'm in, but I prefer the Fibings Pro Dye. There are other brands out there, like you have the Angelus alcohol dyes, and I just prefer the oil dye over the alcohol dye. Really, I think this one looks a little bit better than this one does. And I think with the alcohol, I don't know, it might just be in my head, but I feel like with the alcohol dye, it shrinks my leather a little bit. So I just prefer the oil dye. And don't get me wrong, this right here is alcohol based also, but I haven't seen any shrinkage on the leather at all. So after you dye your leather, you're gonna wanna look at stitching. This is waxed cotton thread right here. You want waxed for your leather projects because it prolongs the life of the thread. It doesn't break as easy. And really, that's basically it. And then some stitching needles right here. So these are John James stitching or harness needles. I bought a pack of 6 of them about 2 years ago, and I've been using the same 6 ever since. I've never had an issue with it, and they've never broke on me. And then the last step that you want to do is you want to finish off your leather with some carnauba cream. There's carnauba cream, there's snow seal, there's a couple other types of stuff. A lot of people just put oil on their leather and leave it at that. Carnauba cream won't go rancid like some oils can. Neat's foot and minx oil, all that stuff that, in my opinion, it's not good for the leather. The minx oil and the neat's foot breaks down the leather over time, from what I've been told. And olive oil will go rancid after a while. So this right here is all you need. All right, so the last thing I want to talk about is the leather itself. So I get most of my leather from Springfield Leather. And honestly, I prefer to get the belly cuts. It's usually the less expensive route to go. And this is just a small chunk of a belly cut. But it's just fine for what I want to use it for. I also prefer some of the character that you get in these cuts of leather. So you get a little bit of scarring, you get the tanning marks on there. And honestly, for me, I don't mind seeing that in some of my leather projects. One little tip with your leather is you don't throw it away. You save all your scraps. This sheath that I made that I keep showing off was made 100% with scraps. It was stuff that was thrown into a bin, and I didn't think that I would be able to use, but I've been using up all my scraps. I'm using every piece of leather that I have purchased. Right here I'm making a Leatherman sheath right here, and this is, again, it's made out of scraps. So save everything, because you never know when you're going to be able to use it for another project. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. It was my first attempt at an actual legit YouTube video. If you liked what you saw, go ahead and hit the like button. If you want to see more content dealing with leather, outdoors, and general bushcraft, then go ahead and hit subscribe, and hopefully I'll be posting another video next week. Thanks guys, see you later.